Just ahead on CTV News, the financial cost of the Key Bridge collapse. Details ahead. Plus, providing a service for those in need. And a candid conversation with the county's top law enforcer. Those stories and more up next.
Good evening. This is CTV News for April 3rd, 2024. I'm Patricia Vallone.
And I'm Byron Scott. Thank you for joining us tonight. Well, the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge could be the largest ever financial maritime loss, with insurance claims expected to reach $1 billion or more. This according to the American Institute of Marine Underwriters.
Efforts continue in the Patapsco River to clear the wreckage, recover the bodies of the 4 missing construction workers, and open a deeper shipping channel. 2 small channels have already been opened to limited shipping traffic, and officials say divers have confirmed that the mangled wreckage of the bridge is sinking into the bottom of the river.
The complexity is even more complex than we thought going in, just because of how submerged, how intertwined, and how mangled the metal really is. So it continues to highlight the fact that we said this was going to be a long road. This continues to confirm this is going to be a long road. It's also something that we know that there are still, as I mentioned before, there are still a lot of unknowns that we're still working to understand and dissect. We're committed to making sure we get this done. We're committed to making sure we get this done to completion, but we want to be very clear. This is not a simple operation. In many ways, this is a very unprecedented operation in the level of complexity.
And officials say opening a 3rd channel depends on how quickly they can remove debris in that section of the river.
Meantime, Maryland legislators are advancing an emergency bill to provide financial assistance for workers whose jobs are affected by the collapse of the bridge over the Port of Baltimore.
The Port Act will also provide relief for small businesses to pay their workers in an effort to keep their companies afloat. Capitol News reporter, service reporter Peña-Melnyk has the story.
What looks like business as usual at Ace Logistics warehouse in the Port of Baltimore is anything but usual.
People that are depending on their livelihood for port and port-related businesses, they need money to help buy groceries until this gets back to some form of normalcy.
Alec Hajmahalis is co-owner of Ace Logistics. He has about 200 people on his payroll. What he doesn't have is enough work for them all since the Key Bridge collapsed.
We find busy work because we want to keep our employees employed.
Right behind me is where the tragic collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge took place. Some companies have already started laying off their workers, and while other companies haven't had to yet, there's no guarantee that they won't have to in the near future.
We're talking to our competitors, and they're laying off 30 people, 40 people, 50 people a week. If this turns into a 6-month or a year thing, I could see us laying off 50, 75% of our workforce.
Or worse.
Myself, my brother who owned this business, are both besides ourselves because it took a lifetime to get to the point that we're at. And we're remaining loyal to the Port of Baltimore, but we may have to explore opening facilities in other ports.
That is why Maryland lawmakers are rushing to approve funding and distribute money directly to businesses and workers whose livelihoods also collapsed when the bridge fell, using rainy day funds to pay affected port workers what unemployment insurance doesn't pay, and also to make low-interest loans available to small businesses. And with this promise, some hope for business owners like Hajmahalis, who are worried about paying their workers and saving their businesses.
We want to do everything we can to motivate them not to panic, not to leave.
For CNS TV, I'm Alana Mutnick.
The House version of the Port Act is awaiting a joint hearing with the Appropriations and Economic Matters committees. And Prince George's police arrest a man in connection with a fatal shooting in Adelphi. The suspect is ID'd as 36-year-old James Welch, or Jamar Welch Jr. Police were called to the 1800 block of Meseroth Road on March 23rd for the report of a shooting. That's where they found 43-year-old Charles Dent outside suffering from gunshot wounds. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators say that Welch had shot Dent during an argument. He faces first and second-degree murder.
A Bethesda physician could spend decades behind bars for allegedly distributing drugs illegally out of her office. Those drugs include Adderall and Xanax. Both are used to treat anxiety issues. 47-year-old Anissa Maroof was arraigned earlier this week at the federal courthouse in Greenbelt. Investigators say Maroof maintained the operation from 2019 to 2022 and that she knowingly wrote prescriptions for patients who did not need the drugs. If convicted, Maroof faces up to 30 years behind bars.
A data privacy bill before lawmakers in Annapolis is of concern to the Maryland Chamber of Commerce and some small business owners. The Online Privacy Act of 2024 would affect data collection and online privacy, but the Chamber and some small businesses have come out against the measure. Opponents say they are concerned the act will overregulate online data collection and use, making it more difficult and expensive for businesses to advertise. They are urging the legislature to reconsider the bill, which was passed in the Senate and is being considered in the House.
The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development awards thousands of dollars to combat housing discrimination across Maryland. The department gave $260,000 in grant money to the Maryland Housing Center. The money will go toward national, state, and local organizations working to address violations of the Fair Housing Act. Groups will be able to conduct investigations, identify discrimination in rental housing, and file fair housing complaints with HUD.
And a local military veteran is on a mission to bring a sense of dignity to the area's homeless population. Bernadette Fobbs runs April Showers, a mobile shower and restroom trailer that travels around the DMV providing services to the area's homeless population. The trailer contains 2 shower units. Fobbs provides toiletries and clean clothing to the homeless. The trailer has been operating in this area for 2 years.
Well, before I take the shower trailer out, I'll go out and look for populations that we could serve, and then we'll bring the shower unit up, because there's never been anyone who didn't want us to come and provide this service. And not everyone can get into a shelter. So all those individuals who are out there in those tents, we take our shower unit out to them so that they can take a shower, use the bathroom, refresh themselves.
For more information on April Showers, go to the website there on your screen.
Montgomery County lawmakers, police, and community members gathered to address public safety concerns in downtown Silver Spring. Leaders say they're working with partners to tackle crime and to help residents feel safe in the downtown area. But Montgomery police say overall crime in the county increased by 10% in 2023, and the downtown Silver Spring area accounted for 9% of the total. Crimes against individuals also jumped by 9%.
I've directed patrol of officers based on crime data. We're dealing with evidence-based policing. This is not just because we put people in a certain area just because. We are looking at the statistics, we are looking at the issues, and we are putting our resources there. We're adding more foot patrols, we're adding more bike patrols to make sure that we're addressing this.
We've got stationary cameras down here now, and that's just for general protection, but we also have license plate readers, and the car dash cams have been enabled with license plate readers. So when they hit a license plate, it goes into the Maryland database, and if it's a stolen car, they know right away it's a stolen car.
Meantime, through a county program called Drone as First Responder, the jurisdiction has deployed the devices more than 400 times since the program started in November. Officials say the drones have helped police respond to incidents sooner and to gather information quicker.
And we are just days away from a much-anticipated celestial event, the total eclipse of the sun, next Monday, April 8th. More than 31 million people from Texas to Maine will be in the prime location to see this suntastic event. Even if you are outside the path of totality, you will still see a partial eclipse where the moon will look like it's taking a bite out of the sun.
In Maryland, where I will also be, I'll be at home, we're going to have a partial eclipse. So that means the moon is going to partially cover the sun. I will be at about 86%, which will still be pretty spectacular. I'm looking forward to seeing the sun look like Cookie Monster took a bite out of it.
And to learn more about the upcoming event, visit the website there on your screen.
And you are watching CTV News. I'm Patricia Vallone.
And I'm Byron Scott. Still to come, State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy is here in the studio to talk about criminal justice, juvenile justice reform, and much more.
Stay tuned.
Anyone can have asthma, but for Black and African American people, the odds are higher. They have the highest asthma rates in the U.S. and they are more likely to face serious problems that make them need to go to the hospital. The good news? If you have asthma, you can take steps to help keep it under control and live a full and active life. Know the signs and symptoms. Coughing, wheezing, chest tightness, and shortness of breath. Talk to a healthcare provider about what triggers your symptoms and work together on an asthma action plan. Your asthma action plan will show you when to take your medicines, what to do in an emergency, and how to know when your asthma is under control. Don't let asthma slow you down. Visit nhlbi.nih.gov/breathe better.
I wish people knew that when you live in a small town like mine, it's much, much harder to find friends with common interests, especially ones my age. I often feel really alone.
Same here. Seems like every time we finally settle somewhere, I have to pack up and move again. By the time I make a friend, a real friend, I have to say goodbye to them.
I totally get it. I live in a big city, but it can feel just as lonely. It's tough, but it gets easier.
Honestly, I totally get what you're going through. It's nice to know that you feel the same.
You enjoyed my story. I really enjoyed your story as well.
Welcome back. Well, bills that would alter a new state law dealing with juvenile crime have now crossed over to the opposite chambers in the Maryland General Assembly. But both Senate and House versions remain stuck in committees. Delegate Gabriel Acevedo has remained steadfastly opposed to changes in the Juvenile Reform Act that passed in 2022. That bill prohibits children under 13 from being charged unless the act is a violent crime or committed with a handgun.
I think there are a lot of ways that we can really approach this issue through data-proven solutions, and as it stands right now, I think what we're doing is reactionary public policy making, which is responding to the voices from a few zealous police chiefs and prosecutors who are saying that, we need to do X, Y, and Z as it pertains to 10, 11, and 12-year-olds that really is not grounded in data.
Any issues of the legislation must be resolved by the end of the session next Monday.
And from domestic violence and truancy to confronting the juvenile crime head-on, the state's attorney's office has been at the forefront advocating for victims and holding offenders accountable. Some of the most pressing issues facing our society today fall in the lap of our studio guest.
Yes, and joining us now in the studio here for a candid conversation is State's Attorney Aisha Bravoy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back in this wonderful studio.
Yes, so tell me a little bit. You just heard from Delegate Acevedo, some of his concerns about where this bill was going or the changes that will be made to a 2022 law. You were there in support of the newer law.
Absolutely. I think that the voices that we have heard were those of our constituents. They're very concerned about young people who are committing offenses in our community. And everyone wants accountability. We want the best for our young people. We don't want them in the justice system, but we do want to make sure that they don't commit further crimes. And how do we do that? I think by holding them accountable is one of the best ways.
I've heard you speak many times in the past. You'll talk about truancy, linking it to child crimes. What's that link, and how do you treat one without treating the other?
Well, the truth is you shouldn't, and you kind of can't. You have to do both together. Truancy, we know, is one of those factors when we look at individuals who are committing, especially the most serious offenses. When we look at, their school records, what we find as a commonality is that they have not been in school consistently. And so we do need to address that issue because it is against the law for a young person not to be in school. So that's the first law that is broken. And then when they are not in school, they're not learning, they're not on a pathway pathway to success. So what are they doing? Oftentimes they're out committing carjackings, robberies, and other issues in our community. So, I mean, we have to do both. We have to do both.
So in that case, should parents be held accountable? Absolutely,
and that is what we are doing. We have a great partnership with our new CEO or Superintendent, Dr. House of the school system. We have worked with him to launch a truancy pilot program where we are getting cases of young people who are committing truancy violations a lot sooner than we would in the traditional process. Sometimes in that process, it would take maybe 60 to 90 days of them being truant to finally get to our office. Now, once an individual is identified as having missed 10% or more of school time, their parents get a notification. And these are at select schools. We're trying this out as a pilot program. Their parents get notification, an invitation to come to a meeting with us. We explain the law. We explain that there are resources available in our communities to assist them in complying with the law. And if they don't comply with the law, we are filing those cases. So our first event was held at Bladensburg High School. What we have learned from the personnel workers was that a lot of students did return to school. For those who did not, we have filed petitions in our juvenile court to bring those parents and children to court to account for their absences.
Now, this really came to be highlighted in the Baby K case. Can you tell us just briefly what that was and why?
Yeah, so that was the case, unfortunately, where a young student here in Prince George's County boarded a school bus with 2 other individuals and attempted to shoot and kill another student. We prosecuted that case, and as you know, he pled guilty recently. But in looking at his background, what we found was that he was really not in school consistently for a long period of time. And so that is a problem not only for him, but also for his parents, because his parents should have assured that he was in school. And if they are having problems, or if any parent is having problems getting their children in school, they need to let someone know. There are resources there available to assist parents with getting their children to comply with the law. But what is not okay is not to comply with the law and to ignore the problem.
So I understand you've worked closely with Baltimore State's Attorney Ivan Bates. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, we found that we had a lot in common. Not only are we both graduates of Howard, he went to undergrad, I went to law school there, but we face a lot of the same issues with respect to young people in our communities. Carjackings are on the rise, the use of handguns and the commission of offenses, or just young people with handguns. So it's a big issue in both of our jurisdictions. So what we decided to do was partner together to work in Annapolis to fight for changes in our juvenile laws, as well as other bills that we think will help to protect our respective communities. And so far we've been pretty successful. And so of course there are a couple of bills we're still waiting to see what happens with, but we are very happy with the changes that have been proposed by both the House and the Senate when it comes to our juvenile laws. And whichever version of the bill pass, or if they come up with something new, it's going to be better than where we are now. So we're pretty pleased about that.
Okay. And we are going to have you back in just a moment. We're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. She will be right back with us with more.
Stay tuned.
As a parent, you know you can't prevent every accident. Play it safe with the right equipment. Add a mouthguard to your child's sports or recreational equipment list to help prevent the impact of a painful and costly facial injury. Mouthguard should be fitted so it does not misalign the jaw, lightweight, strong, easy to clean, properly sized, covering the upper and lower teeth and gums. If your child does sustain a facial injury, seek an evaluation from an oral and maxillofacial surgeon. OMSs are experts in handling injuries to the face, mouth, and jaws. Learn more at myoms.org.
Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy. But let me ask a quick question here. A lot of carjacking, some involving 12, 13-year-olds, should they be tossed in jail?
So the juvenile justice system really is about rehabilitation. So when you say tossed in jail, that doesn't really happen in the real world. What happens is the Department of Juvenile Services, once a child is arrested, will make a decision on whether or not that child should be detained or any conditions that they should be released under pre-merits hearing. So that's really what it's about. The question is, ultimately, is the community safe if this child is out pre-merits? Can they be out on certain conditions, whether it's ankle monitor or they have to visit programs or get counseling or whatever conditions that the Department of Juvenile Services deems appropriate? They make the initial decision. If they are released, then they wait for their merits hearing. If they are detained, then a judge sees them the next judicial day to determine whether or not they should remain detained or if they should be released. So I think this idea that like all of these kids just go, going to be locked up, that's just not what happens in the real world. We want to touch upon domestic violence a little bit. We've seen an increase talking about domestic violent murders and that involve family situations. Yes. How is your office involved? So we are very involved. Domestic violence is near and dear to me. This issue, I lost a cousin to domestic violence. She was killed by her husband. So what we have thought through, I think, very well is how to address this issue of intimate partner violence. And I think the county has done a really good job of establishing agencies like our Family Justice Center to really address intimate partner violence. We went to Annapolis, made strangulation a first-degree felony, and my office established a strangulation protocol, which strangulation is the most lethal form of domestic violence, but that often involves intimate partners. What I think we all now have to shift our conversation to is this other familial relationships that end up in violence. So last year we had more than double the number of homicides that involved intimate partners than other family relationships. So I think we had about 6 or 7 intimate partner homicides, but we had 14 other familial relationships that turned into not only violence, but ultimate tragedy, which is death. So we are very focused now on messaging around family violence in a way that will capture these other relationships. So we have a work group going on right now with our sheriff's department, our police department, and a number of nonprofit stakeholders where we are going to be launching a messaging program around domestic violence that does not involve intimate partners, because what we're finding is that a lot of those situations that end up turning into violence involve individuals who have mental health issues. And so you can't say to a parent, leave, right? You don't have to stay. You can leave your minor child. That's not practical, right? So if the minor child is the individual who is the abuser in the home or exhibiting abusive, acts in the home, then how do we help that family? Because we can't tell a parent to leave their child. That's not practical. We also have siblings who have had arguments that have turned into homicides. We've had parents who've killed their children, and that's not normal. These are individuals who are suffering from severe mental health issues. We address them, obviously, in the criminal justice system by holding them accountable, but we shouldn't let it get there. There's something that we can do in between the tragedy and when they first start exhibiting this behavior. We have to, I think, respond differently, and we have to have those institutions in our community that we need, like long-term mental health treatment facilities where people can
We're
get
going to have to bring you back on here so we can talk a little bit more nemore. Next time, there's a lot more to go with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's for you. For more information about any of these programs or initiatives we spoke about today,
you can go to the Office of the State's Attorney website at pgsao.org.
Hey there, sports fans, and coming up in a bit, UMD quarterback Talia Tagovailoa reflects on his time at Maryland as the NFL Draft approaches. That story and more coming up soon. Stay right there.
Purina helps create safe spaces for domestic abuse survivors and their pets. Purina cares here.
Okay, everybody, get excited because it's time for your midweek sports page. It's an exciting time for NFL prospects as the draft is less than a month away. And one player that is hoping to get his name called is Terps quarterback Talia Tagovailoa. Tagovailoa had been the Terps quarterback for the last 4 seasons before deciding to call it a career at College Park. I was able to catch up with Tagovailoa recently, and he gave a message to NFL teams on why they should draft him.
I know I'm a leader and I'm a hard worker. I earned the respect of people in the locker room, every locker room I went to, and I'm a competitor and I love my teammates. I think that's the biggest thing, is getting to build relationships with your teammates and having, you earning their respect and stuff like that. And I'm gonna give it my all, everything I do. So.
Tagovailoa also reflected on his career at Maryland and expressed his appreciation for head coach Mike Locksley for helping him becoming the player that he is today.
I just appreciate Coach Locks, and just the whole Maryland community and this university, for giving me an opportunity, man. Such a crazy, crazy journey where the school has been, and a lot of credit goes to Coach Locks and this team and the guys, man. It's just been such a great journey, and I was just telling Coach that I appreciate him. Came by so quick, everything finished so fun. I was just thanking him and telling him I appreciate him for everything that he's done for me, giving me opportunity. Always wanting the best for me and stuff like that. So,
the NFL draft begins on April 25th. Moving on to college hoops, Terps point guard Jameer Young continues to rack up accolades. The Upper Marlboro native has been chosen to participate in the NABC Division I All-Star Game. This game features the top senior student athletes in the country. Young is coming off of a season where he averaged 20 points per game, which is ranked 3rd in the Big Ten. The All-Big Ten second-team honoree also reached 1,000 career points this past season, and this made him just the 6th player in the last 18 seasons to reach 1,000 career points at 2 different schools, with the other school being UNC Charlotte. The game takes place on Friday at 3:30. And that wraps up your Wednesday sports page. Simon Buggs, CTV Sports.
Thanks, Simon. Now a look at our 3-day weather forecast. Tonight we'll have heavy showers and thunderstorms.
Tomorrow, that rain continues and we'll see a high of 57. Friday, we'll get a high of 53 and a low of 37 with a 30% chance of rain. On Saturday, skies will be clear. It'll be mostly sunny with a high of 54 and a low of 37.
And now a look at your community calendar. The Prince George's Sheriff's Office has partnered with Triumphant Church to host a Shred Day and cell phone recycling event.
It takes place this Saturday between 9 a.m. and noon. Maryland residents can bring up to 3 boxes of paper and recycled cell phones no longer in use. For more information, contact 301-958-6580.
That wraps up CTV News for now. Thanks for joining us.
See you again tomorrow night. Good night.
I always tell people I was the luckiest guy in the world. I wanted to be an Army man or a fireman, and I got to do both. As a firefighter, my job was about saving lives. I never thought one day I would be fighting for mine.
After spending his career answering the call to save others, Ken was diagnosed with ALS. Now he's facing his biggest battle, for more time. For 70 years, Muscular Dystrophy Association has been answering the call to help people live longer and more independent lives.
MDA means to me hope.
MDA is leading the way for people living with ALS, muscular dystrophy, and other neuromuscular diseases by accelerating research, advancing care, and advocating to empower families like Ken's.
I wouldn't be living as good of a life with ALS if it wasn't for MDA. MDA is helping people live stronger and love longer. Learn more at mda.org today.